that whole intelligence is an overall approach, but there
Mm,
are five different dimensions of it.
mm,
And it's the presence of all five dimensions together which really transforms human functioning, organizational effectiveness onto a different level. It
mm,
shifts things fundamentally to a
mm,
different level of where people say, this is real. This is right. This is what we need in the world.
mm. Hi, Malcolm.
Hi, Darren.
See you again.
Yeah. What's cooking in your pot at the moment?
Um, well, I mean, I think I'm reflecting on some of the conversations I've had lately. I think the thing in my pot, that's an interesting metaphor. I think that things like stage of life, where I'm
Mm.
noticing I'm meeting many people that are in their middle stage of life. When I say middle, mid 40s, 50s, that sort of stage, where they sort of had they've had a focus, they maybe achieved a lot in their life,
Yeah.
and they're getting to the point of questioning what's next. What's my purpose for the rest of it. It's an interesting time, isn't it? You've in
Mm.
some ways hopefully you've got more, well, hopefully you've got as much left as you've had already. And then sort of begs the question, so how am I going to spend my time in that remaining time? So that's something that I think is quite interesting. It could be really interesting in the context of whole intelligence. Maybe that providing
Yeah.
it, that being a context in which we could talk about whole intelligence. How about you?
Well, interestingly, I mean, I'm also trying to get some overview of what we're doing. It's not, I mean, I constantly am seeking to get new overviews of what we're doing because I think that whole intelligence is a highly adaptable concept
Mm,
and necessity.
mm,
For the kind of people you're talking about, midlife, hugely significant about how they are using their abilities, using all of themselves in the work that they do, and are um, making an effective contribution.
mm,
Because I'm also around a lot of people who are older than that, and I'm around people of my generation who are often looking back, but also still asking questions, particularly around, oh, I haven't got that long left, but what am I going to do with it, and what's the legacy I'm leaving?
mm, mm.
So
Absolutely.
that's a very, I think almost at every age,
Mm,
except for very young people, there's
mm,
a lot of questioning going on, and I think it's going on now much more than before because of the state of the world and the uncertainties and
mm.
the known dangers and known problems that we're facing as humanity.
Yes, yes, yeah. I think legacy's been coming up as a sort of theme as well with the people I'm talking to. It's a legacy and contribution. What if I've got this certain amount of time left? What will my contribution be, and what does that mean in terms of what I leave behind?
Yeah,
Uh, that's that's definitely a
yeah.
consistent theme. Um, so how do we sort of use whole intelligence as a sort of lens to make some sense of these stages of life, would you say?
Well, in a sense, the stages of life evolve because we live in a society which is changing. We're constantly changing.
Mm,
Yeah, we are. I mean, somebody pointed out that actually we start dying the moment we're born,
mm,
and but somehow the awareness of endings heightens our sense of purpose or what we are on about it. And in
mm,
a sense, those questions that people are asking are whole life questions,
mm.
aren't they? Like, What am
Mm,
I doing? What am I doing here? What do I believe in? What do I stand for?
mm,
And so we're into the realm of the five dimensions of whole intelligence, which enable us to kind of ground it in everyday life and in people's felt experience, and they can witness these five dimensions all around them.
mm,
Um, so I've been reading this wonderful book, Dear Life by Rachel Clark,
mhm,
who's a palliative medicine doctor, um, works in hospices,
mhm,
and has written an incredible book, this book, Dear Life, which I think everybody should read.
mm,
And it's all about the processes by which life ebbs away, and but of course, and how people have a good death comes into all of this. But I don't really want us to focus on that
mhm.
because at the moment, although it's at the back of my mind all the time,
Yes.
um, because I think it would be quite good to look at visiting the five dimensions
Mm,
in terms of how they support people in their everyday life and in their thinking.
mm. Yes. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. And do you think it should, do you think it could be about these sort of significant moments of shift that we experience as humans, or is it more general than that?
Well, I think there's significant shifts, particularly around in the realm of what we talk about as self-recognizing,
Hmm.
which is about waking up,
Hmm.
awakening in terms of, given we are a psycho-spiritual approach, I mean, awakening
Hmm.
is such a key dimension of every spiritual tradition.
Hmm.
And so those moments, those aha moments, those moments of realization, moments of, oh my God, that's what it's all about, those kind of times
Hmm.
um, are, are critically important. We know that.
And
There's,
sorry, I'm just interrupting you, but I mean, you mentioned,
and
and yeah, you mentioned, and we're a psycho-spiritual um, approach. So what do you mean by that?
well, I mean that, well, at least my sense is that we are, all of us, struggling to grow up in a way, grow up as adults.
Mhm.
We our development doesn't stop with our biological changes going from child to adult. We continue to evolve. We continue to, if you like, generate insight, wisdom, experience, making sense of things, grasping what life is about and where do we fit into it. That's a process that is continuous throughout life, particularly in the middle years and later in life. So um, now, if you go deeply enough into that, you first of all you realize that you've been brought up in a certain way, and you've had a certain kind of education, you've had a certain kind of social milieu in which you've grown up, and that largely shapes our ways of thinking, our ways of making sense of things. It's not that we're complete isolates; we're completely and utterly immersed in this environment of ours. We're like fish in the sea, and it's like fish in the water, and we're waking up to the fact that we are in water
Mhm.
and we are fish, and we therefore there's things we can do and things we can't, and so on. I mean, it's like it's an immensely psychological exploration, and at the same time, we're touching right into the spiritual questions that apply right across every religion and every existential approach, really,
Mhm.
is, what are we here for? How can we live more meaningfully? How can we bring more energy, vitality,
Mhm.
love,
Mhm.
beauty, excitement, pleasure
Yes.
in living? How can we bring all of these into fruition?
Mhm. Yes, and so and is that where you see whole intelligence as a way of being that allows you to do all of those things as a human?
I think it absolutely is critical
Mm,
to the developmental process
mm,
for our time. Um, I think that unfortunately the institutionalized religions have become encrusted with so much um, institutionalization, tradition,
mm,
um, and it puts people off. They
mm,
need something else. They need a revitalized spirituality.
mm,
And I think it has to be one that grows out of our psychological understandings of human beings, like understanding how we're formed and how we can, the things that we have to learn in order to function well as human beings and function and healthily, to have a healthy life, particularly with so much stress, so much societal confusion, so much political conflict, etc., around us. How do we stay sane in this
mm.
world?
Yes, yes. I get. Do you know? It reminds me of a conversation I had recently with a friend of mine and she said, my daughter, she's got a 9-year-old daughter. She said, my daughter asked me the other day, are all jobs stressful, mummy? And she said, I wonder what I was conveying there, and
Mm.
so yeah, I can, that theme's definitely pretty consistent with many of the people I
Yeah.
speak to. But
Well,
I go on.
well, I'm just thinking that we are creating a world which is, and I think it's going to get. I'm afraid it's not going to get any better with more and more AI.
Mm,
Um, I think some things will get much better, but at
mm,
the root of it is like what does it mean to live in this complex technological world?
mm.
And people of my generation can remember what it was like when we didn't have, if we wanted to find something out, we walked down to the corner shop or the post office and we asked a human being.
Yes.
Nowadays, you can't do that,
Mm,
and we're hedged in with, um, well, people say, how do you want to be contacted? Email, WhatsApp, text,
mm,
mobile, landline,
mm.
TikTok, I don't
Yes.
know, Facebook. So, I mean, there's so many different ways in which people are buzzing around in the intercommunally, but they're not necessarily meeting.
No.
They're not actually meeting and having the kind of physical presence.
Mm,
I mean, you and I, we have met
mm,
physically, but
mm.
the vast majority of our contact has been on Zoom.
Yes. Yes. God, that's really interesting. And I guess thinking about stages of life, how we're coping with things, how we're developing as humans. So how then, and I interrupted you before you started talking
Right?
about responding to the
This is all
situation.
about interrupting each other.
But so how in that context, that context of human development of making sense of life, even
Yeah,
end of life, and also the introduction or the growing introduction of AI and what it means for us to be human. So how how can whole intelligence help us to make sense of these things and live a good life? Is
yeah.
it?
Well, I think, I mean, what I come back to over and over is the fact that that whole intelligence is an overall approach, but there
Mm,
are 5 different dimensions of it.
mm,
And it's the presence of all 5 dimensions together which really transforms human functioning, organizational effectiveness onto a different level. It
mm,
shifts things fundamentally to a
mm,
different level of where people say, this is real. This is right. This is what we need in the world.
mm,
And therefore, I want to just underline that it's not it's deeply esoteric activity. It's about 5 different things that actually make a difference to how the world functions.
Mm.
And
Yes.
maybe we need just to mention what they are, although we've done this in other
Mhm.
contexts.
Yeah, I think that would be good. And also, how they help us to be human
Yeah, exactly.
rather than AI, what it is to be human. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that would be really interesting, Malcolm.
Well, which one comes to mind for you first in terms of making somebody human?
Oof, that's a great question.
It's a, I, I mean, I have an answer, but I wanted to hear what you had to say.
well, I mean, I think I seem to naturally go to responding to the situation because it sort of feels like a natural place to start. And at the same time, the whole embodiment and thinking about us as humans and what we bring in our entirety, not just our brain, but our whole body. And that often gets missed, I think, or forgotten. And I think that's where I am at the moment, is between those two. Is so
Right. It's
maybe where
very interesting. Very
where-
interesting because the first one that came to mind today,
yeah.
and it's different on different days and so on, was the fact that we're not alone in the world, that we're interrelating.
Mhm.
But I mean,
Yes.
they all to mesh together. That's the I mean, what makes the thing very powerful is that they're all. I mean, those three that are absolutely pivotal. So
Mhm.
yes, we're always responding to situations, and we have to be much more mindful of the context in
Mhm.
which we're operating.
Mhm.
So I mean, I had an example of this yesterday. I was talking to a guy who was helping me with a rather complicated um, email problem.
Mhm.
And he said, the way that I talk with you is not the same as I talk with the next people that I work with. I have to adjust. It's not
Mhm.
just a technical process. I have
Mhm.
to have a connection with you as an individual person.
Yes.
I thought, yes.
Mhm.
So, it was a good example of the interrelating aspect,
Yes.
connection. But
Can I just mention something on that one?
yeah, of
Like
course.
it reminds me of um I was playing with AI as a coach, creating an AI coach, and one of the questions was, how do you want me to respond to the conversation? So
Mhm.
having to help it to learn how it wants to respond to the conversation. So it was that weird sort of dynamic where you're thinking, all right, yeah, it's not intuitive, is it? It's like it has to be told whereas as humans, well, depending on how, I guess, emotionally intelligent we are
Yes.
intuitive. Um,
Yes. We're gifted with extraordinary sensitivity to this.
mm,
Witness how people drive around in their cars and don't continuously bump into other cars. It's
mm,
like there's a sense that we're assessing the situation and actually interpreting other drivers,
mm, mm,
so that there's an interrelating thing, but we're also responding to the situation, which is
mm,
constantly changing. And they
mm,
have real problems with driverless cars. They
mm.
still haven't solved it, really.
No, no, because of the complexity and all of the sort of
Yeah,
the dimensions that it
yeah,
has to consider. Mm.
yeah.
So thinking about responding to the situation then. So what do we need to do with that? If that is one of the key elements of whole intelligence, what is it as
Yeah.
humans we need to be thinking about that will help us live a good life, a fulfilled life?
Well, I think to become much more aware of how we're being influenced by the world around us
Mhm.
and learning ways to live better within it. I mean, there are things like a lot of people are now realizing that they can't just mindlessly listen to the news every night or watch the news because it depresses them and they start having bad dreams or they go to bed feeling despondent, and that's not good for them overall. That's
Mhm.
a realization, it's a responding to the situation,
Mhm.
allied in this case to self recognizing, which is another of the dimensions. It's like
Mhm.
I have to wake up to the fact that watching the news every time is just not good for them. Now, other
Mm,
people, it doesn't, they're not so affected by that. They're affected by something else.
mm,
Like but things like knowing that we need sleep and good sleep and being interested in that, that's about responding to the situation of overwhelming stress in the surroundings. But
mm,
it's also about being embodied, as you noticing the quality of your sleep and how long you're sleeping and so on,
mm,
and also self-recognizing. So they all, in a sense, fit together. They're all saying, leading to the same thing, which is being acting more intelligently,
mm.
given the conditions that we're in.
Yes. I sort of feel like it's almost like becoming conscious again. You know, whole intelligence gives
Yeah,
us a sort of a frame to become more conscious again. So conscious of how we're responding to the situation, like you said, how are we responding to the media inputs that we get every day? You know, how is it
yeah,
affecting us? So how's it affecting me, my sleep? So how I feel. So the
mm,
embodiment,
sure.
another factor in whole intelligence. And you know, and you mentioned self-reflection. So how am I reflecting? You know, am I reflecting on that? Becoming conscious of my reflections in the moment. Yeah. And then maybe experimenting. We haven't covered this one,
Well,
but experimenting with different
yeah,
ways.
yeah. Of course, we've got to constantly have to invent new ways to be in the world in order to meet it,
Mm,
you know, and to meet the conditions, because we've never uh, we never met whatever's happening to us at the moment. We've never met it before.
mm. Yes, every moment's new. Yes.
Every moment we're having to invent, create, use, even if we're doing habitual things.
Mm, yeah. So we've talked about responding to the situation, how it can affect how we're in, you know, our embodied experience of that, how we might be reflecting on those things, and we may then experiment with different things. And they're four of the elements of whole intelligence. But you started with connection, the interrelation between us as
Yes.
humans. So I just wondered what was leading you down that path at the beginning of our conversation.
Um, well, first of all, most obviously, you and me,
Mm,
we're not doing. Um, the quality of our connection comes into the total impact of the vlog. I mean, it's like,
mm,
you know, if I hated your guts or you mistrusted me profoundly or I was bearing a big grudge, I mean,
mm,
it wouldn't work.
mm,
I mean, it's the fact we are together and we respect each other and we've been, you know, working together and we're exploring together. That's
mm.
a key part of what makes this work.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's always the case in every relationship. There's always two people in any two-person relationship. It's co-created, and they make a dance together.
Mm,
They dance together, and we are dancing with
yes.
ideas and words
Mm,
and looking at each other and remembering remembering our past in a way comes into it too.
mm. And what do you mean by that?
Well, we've known each other for a few years now.
Mm,
And in a sense, all of that provides a kind of foundation
mhm.
for for being able to experiment freely. Now, there's
Yes.
a huge range of things I could say to you, and you would not mind. And same the other way around.
Mm,
We could tease one another, and we cry together if we were
mm,
deeply sad or moved with something. We
mm.
could laugh together. You know, there's a dance that we could engage in,
Yes.
and with strangers meeting, they have to get through to being able to be real.
Mm,
And part of the message of whole intelligence is let's get on with that. Let's
yes.
cut let's cut through all the stuff that keeps people apart
Mm,
and objectifying them and imagining things about them which we don't know.
yes. And so
Like,
how, yeah, and so how does the practice of whole intelligence, because that's how I feel about whole intelligence. You have to practice it, don't you, to remain conscious. It's a
Yeah,
bit of a weird, it's a bit of a weird one, thinking about the learning ladder where you're, consciously competent and then unconsciously competent. But
that's
I'm
right.
not sure that you ever. I'm wondering about with whole intelligence whether we've got to come back to be consciously competent again, haven't we? Because
Yeah.
maybe we've forgotten. We've
Yes.
forgotten how to.
Yes, because we live in such a skewed kind of world,
Mm,
which is often forcing us apart.
mhm,
I mean, for all the connect, I mean, it's back to the point I made earlier, with all the multiple forms of connection that we have between us
mm,
in terms of new ways of communicating, fantastic for certain purposes.
mm,
But if we are also potentially losing something,
mm.
I'm remembering when I said earlier, I'd met you a lot on Zoom. Then I met you in person, and we were in a group, and I was standing behind you, and I thought, God, the back of his head. I've never seen the back of his head before.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and it changed my perception of you in some way. I can't.
Mm,
You became a different person in a way,
yes, yes,
and it
yeah,
was rich, a
mm,
rich addition.
mm, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
I've got a funny feeling we're running out of time. Is that true?
Yes, we are. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, but so I guess it might be useful just to reflect on what we've talked about. I noticed we've touched into all of the elements of whole intelligence. We've talked about responding to the situation. We've talked about the importance of connection and the quality of those relationships, like you were just talking about. We've talked about how that can make us feel and how we have our sort of embodied experience, which is
yeah,
uniquely human. And our ability to reflect on situations so that we then may change how we respond to situations. And you talked about that then allowing us to experiment, to experience things differently and
yeah,
being conscious about that.
yeah.
Is there anything else you'd add to that?
Mhm.
Is there?
Well, just to underline the fact that we're here, that we don't know the future of the world. Things look very dark and dismal at times, and we can be very pessimistic. What role do we have? And I'm thinking that in some ways we're like whole intelligence is like first responding. It's like paramedics. There are things that we can do. But other times, when I think that we've actually passed so many stop signs as a species, that we've created conditions in which our species may go seriously extinct, even, and we're really into the realm of palliative medicine, and so I mean that would be. But we still will need our whole intelligence, whatever stage we're at. These are essential human qualities, and um, whether we call them spiritual or psychological, I'm not so fussed about that. They are just what enable us to act intelligently. So that's a rather big thought to leave on. But anyway, as
Yes.
always, as always, great to talk to you, and go well.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Malcolm. I really enjoyed that today.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.